Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking VoIP with Datagate. In this episode, we're discussing how ConnectWise users can leverage Avalara and Datagate to solve communication tax challenges with ease. AvaTax for Communications, Datagate, and ConnectWise integrate seamlessly to build telecom services with automatic tax compliance, invoice generation, and easy reporting. Today, we're joined by Steve Lacoff, who's the General Manager of Avalara for Communications at Avalara, to discuss how service providers using ConnectWise can leverage Avalara and Datagate to add additional revenue stream to their business without worrying about manually having to keep up with communication tax rules and regulations. So Steve, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. And so Steve, first of all, how does Avalara solve sales tax challenges for ConnectWise users at present? I know that you have a long partnership with ConnectWise, and so please tell us, what Avalara is doing firstly in the sales tax area.
Yeah, so from a sales tax perspective, that's really part of Avalara's core capability, and so we have a whole suite of solutions that power sales and use taxation, and then all of the downstream compliance processes associated with that. And so Avalara has a pre-built integration directly into ConnectWise, where those transactions can be sent to our AvaTax engine, and sales and uses is calculated and then fed back from a billing perspective.
Excellent. So I guess that's useful for where an MSP has customers spread around the United States. I suppose it gets very complicated with the different jurisdictions and rules.
Yep.
I guess.
Yeah. So the more geographies that an MSP is selling into, really unlocks a whole range of tax complexity where it's just not feasible to do that manually. And then we also have a set of capabilities outside of just taxation that power returns and registrations, and kind of all of the other tax and compliance processes that flow out of tax. But again, that's just for an MSP who's selling services that are only subject to sales and use tax.
Right, absolutely. And so obviously telecom is becoming very popular with MSPs. Adding VoIP and data circuits and all sorts of communication services. So what does Avalara offer in that respect in terms of communications taxes, etc.?
Yeah. No, and so that's where our business unit, Avalara for Communications, comes into play. So we have a purpose-built set of capabilities that's similar to what I just described before with AvaTax, but it's AvaTax for Communications. And so we have a tax engine, right, that calculates not only sales and use, but all of the range of communications taxes that apply to communication services. And you mentioned, VoIP. VoIP is probably, one of the more complex services from a taxation perspective, where you've got a whole range of taxes that apply. And, the key thing to think about is it's not just calculating that tax, right? So if you're calculating, communication services taxes or utility users taxes or E911 fees, for every tax that you calculate, you've typically got to register with a jurisdiction. You've got to calculate the tax. You've got to present it on an invoice. But then all that complexity cascades into the compliance realm. And so in addition to our tax engine, we also have a returns platform where we can take those transactions, take the tax that we've calculated, and then seamlessly populate the returns, file those returns, and remit payment. So it's really an end-to-end solution that's tailored around MSPs who have a need not only to calculate sales and use, but are also subject to communications taxes as well.
Right, interesting. And so what specific types of services do communication taxes apply to? Things, obviously MSPs are involved in internet circuits, data connectivity, IoT, fax, as well as voice services. Which services should a communications tax be applied?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing to think about is, there's what we think of as traditional communication services, right? So point-to-point private data services, right? Internet is the one service that is not taxable, and we'll see how much longer, that's going to be the case. But any private data service, so a point-to-point circuit, any type of SDN or kind of virtual point-to-point connectivity would typically be subject to communication services taxes. We touched on voice, so any form of voice, whether it's TDM, whether it's VoIP, whether it's a conferencing solution, there's going to be heavy communications taxes on that. Also video, so conferencing or even streaming services are now increasingly subject to communication services taxes. And then also SMS, right? Or any type of, some forms of messaging would be subject to communications tax. IoT in and of itself, a sensor is not, a standalone sensor is not going to be subject to communication services taxes. But one of the things that we see are those sensors are typically bundled with some type of private networking. Right. And so when they're bundled together and sold as one SKU, that SKU would be subject to communication services.
Wow. You mentioned there conferencing and videos. I mean, Microsoft Teams and Zoom calls are becoming very popular. And that's one that we often get asked about too. So what communication tax obligations would providers of those services be subject to?
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to be dependent on the jurisdiction. But I mean, if we look at the service that, we're utilizing right now, which is Zoom, typically that's sold as a seat, right? Yes. So you sell a seat and a license based on the number of end users. And it's a bundle, right? So this bundle consists of software. This bundle consists of voice capabilities. This bundle consists of video conferencing capabilities. This bundle consists of messaging capabilities. And so each of those components would drive communication services, communications taxes for those components of the bundle, right? And so I think that's an important distinction is, if you are selling something as a bundle, even if, 3% of the revenue of that individual bundle is a communication service, you can't avoid the communication services tax obligation, right? It's still going to be subject to it. And again, it's going to vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and that's what makes it so complex, right? These taxes apply depending on the service at the federal level, at the state level, at the city level, and then even at the local level. With communications taxes, there are a lot of special jurisdictions that differ from the jurisdiction boundaries for sales and use tax, and so they're varied and it's very complex.
Well, I mean, I can see, why it's essential really to have experts working for you in this field, and I guess that's what you're offering.
Yeah.
With so many rules and regulations, how does Avalara keep AvaTax up to date with all the latest federal, state, tax, and local regulations? What's the process there?
Yeah, so we're unique from the perspective that, we source our own tax content, which means we have a whole organization within Avalara whose sole purpose is to do nothing but monitor and maintain our rates and rules in our SaaS platform, right? So we don't purchase tax content from third parties. We do all of our own research. We do all of our own curating of that content. And then, we've got a whole automation platform that this research team utilizes to maintain those rates and rules, on a real-time basis. And so these rates change, right? They change in terms of the services that they apply to. The rates can change. The rules can change. And our team is maintaining all of that content and updating it seamlessly within our cloud platform.
Wow. And in fact, I guess another source of complexity we hear of a lot at Datagate is where customers of our MSPs have exemption certificates, etc. Yep. What does Avalara have to offer in the way of managing exemptions?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And yeah, I mean, exemptions are, so to your point, right, MSPs who are selling into an exempt organization, right? And that could be a government entity, that could be a religious organization, or it could be a resale relationship, right? Where someone is not going to be subject to direct tax. So, the exemption management process is different for communication services as well. So if you're selling into an organization, let's say a faith-based organization, and you collect an exemption for sales and use tax, that exemption form very likely is not going to be applicable to exempting the communications taxes. And so frequently there's going to be a separate form that needs to be collected and maintained. And again, there are different rules in terms of how that exemption can apply. And so we've got an exemption management service that allows customers in an automated way to request a certificate, for customers to sign online, to remit that certificate back to the MSP, and then we store it. And then we can do automated campaigns to refresh and renew those certificates because they expire, depending on the certificate and jurisdiction, on a regular basis. So, we've got a whole capability that can really automate and streamline that for MSPs. The other thing that we built that's cool and valuable is in terms of applying that exemption. So it is integrated with our tax engine. Customers can, leverage our tax engine, send over transactions, and then our engine has the intelligence to know whether or not there is an active exemption certificate on file and whether it applies to anything on that specific invoice. And so we've got the capability, in a very automated way to apply those exemptions and, eliminate any kind of manual work associated with the exemption processing.
Yes, I can see that systematic handling of exemptions be very valuable. Also, in the event of an audit, obviously we know that jurisdictions sometimes want to audit telecom providers, and so what sort of services do you offer for audits?
Yeah, and it's we were talking about exemptions, Mark. I mean, exemptions are kind of one of the key vectors for jurisdictions to audit, right? That is typically where they will start in an audit. And so, obviously we've got in those instances, we've got a platform where the customer has, a system of truth, right? And reporting that manages, all of their exemptions and can provide, any backup that they might need from a jurisdictional perspective. In terms of broader audits, we provide a lot of support through that process. And it depends on whether customers are using our engine or our returns process. But we've got, a whole compliance team that works arm in arm with customers, when they are in the unfortunate circumstance where they may be under audit. And so we'll do a lot of custom reporting. We'll help them with data analysis needs. It really depends on the customer and the questions that are being asked of them. But we've got a team, that really sits behind our platform to support customers when they're going through audits.
Excellent. And so what are the key things that an MSP should consider when choosing a tax engine, choosing a tax partner, and what makes Avalara stand out from the competition?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the key thing they should look for is, to make sure that any partner that they're working with is going to be able to help them, with their full set of tax requirements. And what I mean by that is, is they don't want to they want to make sure that whatever engine or whatever compliance partner that they're using has a capability to support them both from a sales and use perspective and from a communications tax perspective. So that's kind of table stakes. The other thing that I would say, we touched on this a little bit earlier, is, the tax engine, calculating the tax and putting that on an invoice is really just the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a whole set of downstream tax and compliance processes that flow from calculating tax and collecting communication services taxes. And so I think, particularly for MSPs that are smaller and don't have, kind of a full accounting or finance department, to make sure that they've got a partner, who can help them, with that full tax life cycle, right? Starting with calculating the tax to registering in the tax jurisdiction, to filing the returns, and, really mapping out those end-to-end capabilities. And then I would say the third thing is, just ease of integration, right? So does the tax partner have systems that don't require integration, right? Does their tax engine talk to their returns platform seamlessly? And then also in terms of connecting into that billing, that billing platform, do they have pre-built, out of the box, proven, hardened integrations, and experience working with that specific billing platform? Because again, a lot of MSPs simply, don't have, deep IT benches, right? And so, they're looking for something that they can quickly integrate and, start leveraging pretty quickly. And so, I would say all those things kind of differentiate our capabilities, right? We've got what we view as the most complete set of solutions in the market. Again, we can calculate the tax, we can file the returns, we can manage exemptions, we can handle all of the registration needs for customers, and we can do it typically through one platform and one partner. And then, we've got a robust set of pre-built integration. So, as we've got a great track record with Datagate, and a lot of experience in terms of working with different billing platforms. And that's a big focus of ours is making sure that we're connecting into a really broad array of billing management, subscription management, and even legacy telco, right, back office systems. It's really important for our business.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you for being our guest today. Everybody, that's Steve Lacoff, General Manager of Avalara for Communications. We'll have Steve's contact details here on the screen. And so thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And as always, may the VoIP be with you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.